curious, there's no magic.
Right.
And since there's no magic, business is a game of power. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, as an athlete, they increase their power through their body, their athleticism, the food they eat.
Yep.
What do business people do?
Like offers.
Offers.
Network.
Competitive advantages.
Yeah. Utility.
Yep. And so since there's no magic, power must be accumulated.
Yeah, what I think about when I think about there's no magic, what is the closest thing we have to magic? And that is our ability to constitute and to interpret things through our senses. And I think that that's something that's not obvious to people. And what I mean by that is when you are on social media or you're watching a movie or something, it's not obvious that what we have to do, that the actual doing, is to be the one in the Constitution to say, this is my intended outcome. My intention is to produce this, and here is the requirements to produce that. If you don't have that, then you're drifting in a way that there's no way you'd be able to do what you want because it's not been constituted. And I think that it starts there, and that's the closest thing we have to magic from my studies.
You said there. It starts there. What's there?
Constitution, your intention, or your commitment that you're in. If we forget that commitment, it goes out of sight, out of mind, because as we are speaking here, this is how we remember, this is how we interpret, this is how we live through our language. And if we lack that, the saying of you should know, it should be without saying, it should go without saying. I don't agree with that. I think that's false. I think everything goes with saying, not only saying, but saying maybe 7, 10, 12 times so that we can remember. And if you have an ambition in your life that you want to take care of your family and live a good life, well, I think we need to know what that is, and we need to hold that everywhere, all the time, under all circumstances. As we study in the philosophy, that's what the magic is. That right there.
Man, that was good.
Yeah.
I often have to reflect on my own doings, and I was going through some questions, and they were like, did you hold your intentions or ambitions for the year? And yeah, I maybe did, but was I holding them often and revisiting them? And for me, that's where I felt like I've got off track a little bit and not staying in my lane and just sticking to revisiting what is my ambition, what's my intention, what am I doing this for, why? And that then provides direction.
Yeah.
But if I'm not holding that, what I'm hearing you say is there's an aimless drift that goes on.
Yeah. There's such a great list that they have in the philosophy, the in direction, the towards list and away from list.
Okay.
And I found myself reviewing that and thinking about that. Live a good life, they're mechanical, right? There are things to do, and there are things to move away from. And if you can operate in that fundamental all the time by the mechanics of cause and effect and realities operations, you will be able to produce uncommon outcomes over a career. And so what I noticed in that was, gosh, I'm kind of in a lot of the away list that they're suggesting that we leave behind and move towards new things.
What are some examples of that?
Yeah, so for me, number one, I think that remembering your ambition at all times, that's something. I think accumulating strategic knowledge all day, every day is a towards.
What about away? What do you think Kris, should move away from?
Distraction, for sure. There are things I think about it are you a creator or are you a consumer? And that's a distinction that I hold. And so in my away list, what I hold is, are you consuming or are you creating? So the consumption part of me, that's where I want to move maybe away from more and more towards the creator. And creator looks like making offers, new offers all the time. That could be something as simple as a new strategy in pickleball, or that could be something as complex as a new offer to buy homes from people, or maybe even develop land or something, hire an employee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have the list memorized, but that's kind of how I summed it up for myself. Was the towards was the creator, and the away was the consumer. Which is difficult because what I've noticed in society and in my life is like everything that's pushed is more towards consumption and entertainment rather than being productive and producing real value for people. And so what I've noticed is I get caught in that little trap of, consuming rather than creating.
You said something there that I want to target. You said something without saying the word help. Everybody needs help. And the moment I found myself conceding that I do need help was the very moment I had a direction. What help do I need? Who do I need it from? What help can I give? And in business, there's three constituents: the owner, the customer, and employees.
Yeah.
And employees are your customers.
Right.
And so in order for anyone to grow, society, us, you, we need help.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So then so kind of just going through some distinctions in the philosophy. But to bring it to this year, one of the intentions we had with this was to go over completing and the things that we experienced this year and what did we enjoy, maybe were some accomplishments, or maybe what were some things where we noticed we could grow. And I think that may be a good place to move us with the distinctions of help. What help did we give this year? What help did we receive this year? What didn't we give or receive? Do we notice there's a gap maybe in where we are versus where we may have intended?
Yeah, there was one strategy that I adopted several years back where at the end of each year, come around December time, was a time for me to pause and reflect to see what happened this year and how do I prepare for next year.
Yeah.
I don't want to start in January of that year to then launch.
Right.
I want to pregame in December.
Yep.
So be prepared. Because when completing, it's my understanding that you pause to reflect and notice what happened, what didn't, and then where to modify from there.
Right.
And so for me, starting back when I constituted my intentions for the year, I feel like I have a more room to improve of revisiting those intentions and being able to hold what they are. So if you catch me in the street or, hey, what's your, like, I want to be able to speak that just like that.
Have it ready to hand.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that's a growing point for me too in reflection. What a couple things I noticed for myself, definitely holding that at all times. And I think something that I can always improve on is being quicker. My speed to market with anything that I do, I think could be 2x'd. And where I got lax was there was no accountability for me in the speed department. And so because of that, I'll give you a couple of examples. So that could be speed as like speed of a project. That could be speed of my cash on cash return for marketing spend. That could be speed of employees producing outcomes and hiring and firing. Speed of learning.
Accumulation.
Speed of implementation. So like for an example, let's just say I had an idea. The actual time that it takes me to implement that idea, going 0 to 1, that may take me 2 weeks. Could take me, depending on what it is. I have one that it took me like 6 months. And I'm like, I could have, if I had just took the time to pause, to reflect and to execute, could have done that in an hour. But here we are 6 months later, and I'm like, oh shoot. Little things like that slow my velocity and then disrupt my focus, because if I don't have that distinction of the velocity, it's like I'm comfortable, I'm moving, I'm just in the flow of things. There's no real urgency.
You might look busy, but are you in effective action?
Right.
Yeah. And I was going to point something out. Some of these tasks or these things that we bring forth and we, what's the word back in school? You, what is that? Procrastinate.
Yeah.
And when you finally get to the project, it takes 2 minutes.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so we as humans build up this story in our head that it's going to be this drawn out process. Yeah. And for some reason, it's some kind of unconscious fear that gets in the way for you fulfilling that intention.
And what's interesting is that's subtle. It's not obvious. And so without intentional effort or intentional reflection to bring that forth and to say, what did I do? How did that go? What were, like, it'd be one thing to say like, hey, how did the day go? Did I produce outcomes? Or it could say, you could orient around, hey, how fast was I in production today? What did I learn today? Do I have a log of that? Am I taking time to reflect and to write a 5-minute summary of my day?
Yeah.
Or to say that, okay, maybe I was slow on my execution today, but good to know now. Tomorrow, we don't do that. We're in different action. What action could we be in? But if we don't take time to pause and reflect, and that's why I like the completion a lot, I think taking more time to pause and reflect during the year is something that I definitely could have benefited from. And I think this is why like a podcast like this is useful, because we can pause and reflect more together to say, like, oh, maybe I had this one thing and you had this one thing. You could share, I could share, and we can develop thinking in that way. Whereas before, it might be, we all have things going on. Life is busy, it's chaotic, it's messy, and we don't take that time. Now that don't take that time, because remember, we're linguistic. If we don't take the time, it's gone. And until you're perturbed in a way that brings that back, you don't hold it. You don't even remember it.
I want to move to, what are some of your proud moments or something that you're proud of for the year of 24?
I think one was I went to a new market, and I'm still there a little bit, but I got my feet wet, and I took a risk in doing so. I think that was really enjoyable for me. It showed me some things about myself. I think also developing my faith this year was, and I'm continuing to, but just as an accomplishment, that was awesome. And I was baptized 4 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's really good, and I'm continuing to develop that. I would say one of the major things that has been a focus of mine for the last 4 or 5 years is my relationship with myself. And I noticed that the more that I love myself, the more love and joy that I have for others. So when I can be more vulnerable with myself and call myself out, not make it so serious, it's more of a playful and enjoyable thing to learn and grow, rather than my definition of failure being that I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm not good enough. The failure now is back to the speed thing. And what are we doing to move forward with that? So I think I have decreased the gap. However, what I'm noticing, what I was calling out earlier, is like, I know I can be way shorter. And so I'd say like those are a few accomplishments that I would say they resonate with me.
That's something I want to bring up too, is there's a fine line of being hard on yourself versus going after the intention, fulfilling it. And at what point do you give yourself grace and appreciation that you've done something?
Right. What is that point?
Yeah. and that's for us as human beings, individuals, to constitute and create, because then if you don't have a condition of satisfaction, how do you know you're satisfied?
Ooh. You say a little bit more about that?
Well, I mean, conditions, like when you constitute intentions, do you want to reach out to 5 brokers that day? By when? By Wednesday, the middle of the week? If you don't set these conditions in place, then it's open-ended.
Right.
Do you need to earn and save this amount before the end of the year, before retirement? When is your retirement?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Oh, that's good.
And what that does is shapes the speed at which you move.
Right.
Because you can make $1 a day for the next million days.
Yeah.
But you might not be around that long.
Right.
So what speed do you need to improve your skill set, your capabilities, so that you can earn and save enough to where you're not thwarting intentions and you do get to retirement, whatever age that is for you, you're fulfilled.
That's really good. So let's talk about that for a little bit, around constituting your ambition for your life. Because, we're talking about completion. And I think that's a really good point of like, okay, we have this life that we desire to live. And inside of that life are commitments. The finances is a part of a commitment. The business is part of a commitment. That we, there's a certain velocity to move if we have this constituted life that we say we want to live. What do you notice about those things in your own life? Are you constantly refining what does it mean to take care of your body or take care of your marriage or your kids? And does that change the commitments you're in? Or does that alter, because of your kids and your wife, does that alter how you act in business? Like you just had a baby. Congrats. Yep. She's about to be one here coming up. So how did that change you specifically, especially around ambition, your motivation or your work? I say motivation, but your ambition really.
Yeah. Well, we live in story. Yeah. And so for me, it's constituting different stories to be in. And a story could look as easy as date night. Right. It doesn't have to be this exclusive high-end steak dinner for date night. It's in the story of what we're doing it for. Yeah. And so for me, it's bringing forth these different stories for the concerns to take care of. Body being one, family, work, play. I got to have some playtime. Yeah. And so for me, what helped was having our baby a year ago, the full year of 24, I was a new father figure. And it was a different situation for me. And so part of my intention was I'm not necessarily looking to push forward in business. I'm looking to maintain. And so that I can still have the family time required to be a father figure and watch Stassi grow up and learn and play. Got it. And also help my wife out. And she's done a tremendous job allowing me to handle the business side of things. And it's a tremendous blessing that she's now able to be a stay-at-home mom and take care of those things.
Congrats.
And man, so it's a good accomplishment for us and just our situation. And so for me, it's about knowing the story that you're in so that you can take care of it and notice when it's complete or satisfied. Otherwise, you're just kind of reacting. Right.
So then on that note, so you spoke a story there, and how I listened was there's some commitments in there, spending time with family. And how did you feel, or in reflection on the assessment, how was that? How did it go? Did you fulfill your intention?
I would say part intentions fulfilled and part none or weren't. And so it gave me a chance to reflect to see where I can modify. And that only comes when I pause to stop. Right. Now, when I stop, I'm not ending things. It's a moment to reflect and look back, and that gives me a chance to orient to how I want to move next year, right, or next week.
Yeah, that's good. I was going to ask too. So you're pausing and reflecting. Did you find yourself this year doing that often, or was it maybe less often? I don't know. What kind of velocity, how many times per year frequency would be ideal? Or are you kind of like, well, just when I feel it, I'll pause. How does that work for you?
Breakdowns. Okay. Whenever a breakdown comes around and occurs, that's usually the moment everybody stops. Yep. Oh, I just got a bruise there. What happened? And so until that breakdown occurs, that's when I'm more amped to see, well, what just happened. But how I could be proactive is by reflecting, like you said, at the end of the day. How was today? How was the week? How was the month? How was the quarter? And that allows you to kind of course correct quickly. Right.
One thing I remember when we were talking with Stan that I thought he did a really good job of was he documented all of these interim situations that he found himself in. And what I noticed with that is we're always in a situation, right? And situations are always threats, obligations, and opportunities. And what I notice in that, and what's being brought forth for me now is this idea that by documenting those interim situations, we can assess the threats, obligations, and opportunities quick, which can also help with our design of maybe a new offer to make something fresh. So for example, it could be this podcast, right? We're in an interim situation of we had to set up time to show up. We incurred costs setting up. Now I think we got set up, but we incurred costs to do that. The threat is that, or the obligation rather, is we're showing up. Threat is you're giving up time with your family, and I'm giving up time doing trading where I could do something else. But the opportunity is that we get to grow and develop our thinking together in this situation. So by being in this situation as an interim one, I can then say, okay, well, what I noticed in that was I made a better assessment of situations here. I made a better assessment of my reflection of the year. So then I can act with that. I can progress in my strategy faster because I understand these things. And that goes for like everything in life and everything in business too. I was playing pickleball yesterday and I got silver.
Nice. Yeah.
It brought out some anger in me actually because I lost in the finals, very close. But it was good. I really appreciated the competition and it was good to bring out that anger because it's showing me some things about myself, which is good. But what I noticed in that is my pickleball game since July, just talking with people up at the place where I was playing, they were like, man, I remember when I played you and I was beating you. Now you beat me like 15-1. My improvement has been crazy, but that's because I'm in the situation. I'm always modifying. I'm always learning and adapting. And I think through studying the business philosophy has allowed me to hold many intentions at one time. So for example, in pickleball, I have a serve, I have like a third shot drop, or I have a third shot drive. I have like game at the net. And there's all these strategies that I'm in. I'm always setting you up to get me in my best position to hit my best shot at you. And so many people can't hold all of those intentions at the same time. But I may notice something in my game where I'm like, hey, serve's a little off here. So then I'm going to modify that, but I'm not changing those other situations. Or I may see an opportunity in a situation during the game. Hey, I can hit these hard shots and they're not going to return them. So I can be in a strategy now. I can change on the fly because I'm analyzing all these situations and I have a framework to think. And so in the progression, playing one time a week, and some of these people play leagues and they do all these things and I'm improving more faster and all this. But it's because I'm always thinking about these situations. So to translate that to life and in business, I think, I did the same thing with food. I did the same thing with exercise. And my intention is to be better focused in business in that. And I think part of my completion and reflection, a breakdown that I experienced was I was not learning from my situations fast enough with regards to employees and producing outcomes, because it challenged me more than pickleball, right? It challenged me more than the gym. And it exposed a lot of weaknesses that I needed to deal with. And I had to develop my love for myself to say, all right, let's keep going, work through this. Okay, change this,
So it sounds like to me you're the ultimate pickleballer.
No, but I have been progressing. I would say that there's some good people up there, man.
What I heard in all that, you're just aware. You're awake, you're aware, you're conscious of what you're doing. And I found for me, before accumulating more power and skill set of different things and capabilities, I too was reactionary and still am to some degree. And so why is that important? Well, we started this topic off by intentions. The end of the year is coming to an end and the next year is coming around. And so partly of my practices I'm in is finding out what I did wrong, bad, good, whatever, and assess so that I can work from there. And I thought it'd be appropriate to kind of pause here and just explain a brief background of what we do.
Oh, yeah.
We're in real estate, and 2017, we first started out, we bought 5 houses, didn't know what we were doing.
No clue.
We got turned down by the bank for the 6th.
Yep. And that was a deal too, by the way.
It was a deal. And so we're like, oh no, what do we do? Let's stop.
Yep.
And here what are we, 6-7 years later?
Yeah.
And now we're doing it and then some.
And then some, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to go back and just check on all of the changes that we went through. The short version is, we started in 2017 and we picked it up 2020, but the reality is, like, we did network marketing, we wanted to do multifamily storage. We went to networking events, and we were trying to network with anybody and everybody. We had an intention of real estate focus, but we didn't have anything going on that we could integrate the help that or the connections we were making. We didn't have the offer.
You know what's coming to my mind are roadblocks.
Yeah.
We had a roadblock. So what do? Naturally, we retreat and try to figure something else out.
Deviate off of.
Oh, that didn't work.
Thing.
Let's go do this. Network marketing. Let's sell these widgets. Let's, whatever the case is that's not real estate.
Yep.
And so for me, by noticing that now, any breakdown or challenge I occur or come across, that gives me, I did it back then. I didn't like how I did it back then.
Yeah.
Let's tackle this problem and charge through the brick wall.
Yeah, it's like not an excuse to give up, more an excuse to dig in. And there's conversation like, hey, what's like the sunk cost fallacy, which is like, you don't want to give up because you've invested so much. Mm-hmm. But I think with what we've done and have been able to produce, we have accomplishments and results to show for our capabilities. And so, there are many different ways to make money. And I think that there's two things. One is real estate and the other one is business. I think they're separate, but we're working them together. I think that since we had the expertise in real estate based on our accomplishments, and I say expertise lightly, just from what we've produced, it's always a choice to go deeper, not go shallow here, shallow in other things. Mm-hmm. And I see that in a lot of people, especially when real estate doesn't work.
Yeah, that was us.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like even in 2020, we had the opportunity to, it wasn't working for us.
And we almost stopped.
We were doing everything, like, how do I say that? We were doing the work to some degree. Yeah, we had some conversations and we wanted to do more of a podcast thing and get away from the failures that we were facing every day. The
main jam, keeping the main thing.
Yeah.
And that was really what catapulted us in 2020, was we easily could have stopped and went right back to a W-2, because that's the easy way out.
Right.
But the challenging thing was we stuck through it and realized, we were just 3 feet from gold.
Yeah. So it's interesting, is like, how many situations are we just 3 feet from gold? That could be the relationship, that could be, partnership, that could be business, that could be anything in life. And I think that the more, I don't know how to say that, like, this is why studying the business philosophy is so important to me. It's like, you're building an expertise of how humans work. So it's like, it doesn't matter the situation, the expertise is in the human. All business is done between humans. All understanding that we have is all based on our language and interpretation. So if we focus and build a background of how to deal with those things fundamentally, we just apply it to the specific situation. And in essence, that is a way to hold marginal utility or a competitive advantage for your entire career. That doesn't mean that, hey, I learned this stuff and now I'm going to stop learning it. I'm committed to this for my entire career.
Oh, it evolves too, and things change. The new offers come about. New 7 Brews now coming in town, competing with Starbucks.
Right.
Coffee is coffee, but now you have a fresh new offer.
Yeah.
So one thing that I always reflect on is how to start. The starting point for us and anyone, I feel, is the most difficult, because you do what you don't know.
Right.
And I feel like I'm at that point again, still, to go for the next level. We all want to earn, well, I don't want to speak for everybody, but we want to earn more money. And in order to double that, something must take place in order to do that. A change of your practices, of who you're with, your employees, or something has to change, so it's not just marginally better, but double.
Right.
And so for me, it's like, man, I'm back at that same spot if I want to double.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had a conversation, scenario building and thinking about that, there's many avenues. And I think, I was reflecting on this. Ultimately, I think that in life, I'll probably always have one or two real estate businesses, whether it's the rental business and the flipping and wholesaling business, or whether it's like a land development side, but something real estate related is always going to be in my nature. And I think that that's because we've built that background of the expertise and stuff. And I'm in wonder about, so the intention is to double take home, maybe not necessarily revenue, because revenue is not take home, right? And I think people can get that confused. I know for me, it was like a big deal to say we did this much in revenue, but the reality is what are you taking home?
What you keep, how much you keep.
Because at the end of the day, the money that you keep and take home is what you use to live. It's what you use to save. It's what you use to invest so that you can live a good life and retire. And so in the reflection of that, what's come up for me is leadership. And I'm working my way back to think about, well, if leadership is the case, because to me, to hold a highly compensated role, I have to have that identity with people in a way, whether it's my employees, the vendors, customers, networks. To hold an identity with them, I have to produce some accomplishments. Well, what are those accomplishments? Because it's not obvious to think about what is an accomplishment that builds trust with people. And I want it to be a high valued accomplishment. So I don't want it to be just, hey, I do 3 deals, 10 deals a month, or whatever the number is. It's more of like, every time I'm around that guy, I'm better. I learn more. He's such a source of help for me. I want to introduce other people to him, something like that. So I'm working my way back down. I really think it starts with my ambition, which we constituted as to double. The concerns and situations that we may be in, I'm noticing is working with relationships. Is how do I recognize what concerns you have, and how do I recognize like, oh, I could be an offer of help here. And if I don't hold that background, it's hard for me to move from there to be highly valued. So I say all that to say, where I'm learning is leadership is where I'd say is where I notice I can double, is leadership is the space. So what fundamentals do I need to learn? And I think that I'm like philosophies of care and competition and accumulating that knowledge.
There's a lot to learn. And so it comes down to what's most relevant for your situation.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find myself in short-term thinking of just taking care of some situation right now and maybe not addressing the longer-term ultimate ambition.
Yeah.
And so ultimately that might thwart that ambition to take care of this short-term situation.
Yeah, like, oh, I doubled this year. But guess what? I produce costs for everybody else in my life.
Yeah. Family.
Relationships could be like, hey, I literally negotiated everybody down to where they're making such a minimal profit that allowed me to make double. I pushed and shoved and forced and I did it.
But what kind of identity did you produce? And for us, that's customer service and just rapport and relationship is number one priority. So I want somebody to trust us and me and the ability to come through.
Yeah.
Be sincere, be competent.
Yeah. Reliable. Yeah. And I think too, we're doing this for a career, right? It's a 40-year situation. It's not a 1-year thing. And so like, that's where I go with the leadership thing is like, I know that leadership is the answer for me, but my path to produce that leadership is not, it's one of constantly learning and in my ethics, changing my ethics. And it's like the strategy that we hold, just work in that thing, man. Every distinction, completion, working it through the strategy. Setting my intentions for my ambition, working through the strategy. It's like talking with employees, working through the strategy. Assessing breakdowns, working backwards through the strategy. All of these things, that fundamental strategy really helps. But where I'm going with that is it's a long-term game of accumulating knowledge and power. And not power in the sense of like forcing, but more so power in a sense of I have the capability to produce intended outcomes when I constitute them. And I have this way of getting things done it produces satisfaction for everybody. I fulfill on what I say I'm going to do, and producing satisfaction in a way that people say, hey, I like how that happened. I would love to accept an offer of help from this guy again, in the future. And my intention is I want everybody to be there for 40 years. And situations change. So what was satisfactory last year might not be satisfactory this year.
Back when we first started out, 2020, this is the second start. We did our thing in 2017 and then took a hiatus. 2020 come around, and here we are looking busy. We're in movement.
Yep.
We're doing everything but the main jam. And I think that's an important part to highlight is being able to make note of what it is that you are doing. And I remember our coach, Karen, was saying, hey, stick to the income producing activities.
Yes.
We were packing microphones. We were cleaning the office. We were doing Taco Tuesday on social, everything but the main jam.
Yep.
And if we're athletes of business, we have power to accumulate. That's knowledge.
Yeah. And there's a sense of urgency too.
Yeah.
With that. Like, boy, Taco Tuesday ain't getting me closer to them deals, man.
No. And networks too.
Yeah.
Knowledge, networks. When you say the word power, if you have those two, you're powerful. And it's like for us going in the gym, we're able to bench 1,000 pounds metaphorically with one hand. That's power.
Right.
And in business, the ability and capability to transact.
That is the power.
Because you have your structures in place.
Right.
You have the knowledge required to have the capacity to think and act in said situations so that you can fulfill. And if you do that over and over again, now you're producing accomplishments, furthering your identity, and you can use that to leverage to create more abundance.
Right. That's really good. A couple people come to my mind. Steven Schwarzman comes to mind.
Yep.
Specifically around networks, right? His capability to, and some even the guys in Aji too, very powerful capabilities of building strategic partnerships to produce income and transact with people. But I mean, Andrew Carnegie, he came up with, I don't know if he was the source founder of this, but the mastermind that Napoleon Hill talks about, I believe he references that he got that from Andrew Carnegie. And that capability of having a source of help and the ability to transact with people and build something of value to transact with people, I noticed that the most successful people, they do that very well. They have strategic partnerships with people. It's like Bezos owns 9% of Amazon. He doesn't own 100% of it. Or the NVIDIA founder, he owns 4% of NVIDIA. He's worth 120 billion. And Elon owns like 20% of Tesla. But it's not like Elon owns 100% of everything he does. He has a fraction, but he's constantly producing value with these networks to build the value that they have. And he can't rely on his own knowledge. He has to source that and build an organization where they can help execute on his ambition that he constitutes, or business mission.
Yeah, we all, Elon, you, me, we all have 24 hours in a day. It's no different for those folks who are very accomplished. And so for us, it's like, okay, well, what's different about them? And it's them being strategic. It's not necessarily working harder.
Yeah.
When I was out of college working at the bank, even before that, I worked at Little Caesars for 6 years in high school and throughout college. And here I was like, man, all the people around me were working 2 or 3 jobs and they were only making just a little bit more. Whereas they're forgetting the whole power thing.
Right.
It's the knowledge and the skill to produce. And that's my clear message that I want to announce to anyone listening is you can't work your way harder. You got to work smarter. And by that, it's strategic knowledge and increasing your capabilities like an athlete would with their skill set.
Yeah, that's really good. And what I listened in that was knowledge is the difference maker from the, like, your orientation to how you think about earning more knowledge rather than hours worked. So how do we know what knowledge to learn? Or let's say I want to make 100 grand this year and I make 50 now, so I need to double. I mean, how would I go about that to increase like either my productivity, my knowledge, like the value that I add in the marketplace? Like, how would one go about doing that in a way that you notice people working multiple jobs and they're just making a little bit more?
Not that. Okay. You start with not that.
What does that mean?
So not that is a distinction around, I'm not going to do that. That is thwarting my intention. Yeah, I might be making more, but look at the hours I'm having to put in and away from my family, and I'm tired, I'm drained. I am a human, so mechanistically I break down over time.
Right.
So I can't keep that up.
And you have capacity every day.
Yeah. And so not that is like moving away from thinking that you're getting ahead when you're really thwarting overall the intention and ambition there.
Yeah.
And so it starts with first assessing, what do I have available to me right now?
Yeah.
What resources do I have, and how can I configure those in such a way that makes it whole and complete?
Yeah, that's really good. I'm thinking about like, if I'm looking around, I have my resources. I think, it's like, what life do you want to live? Do you want to play video games? Do you want to have a family? Do you want to travel 6 months out of the year? What are those intentions you have to give way to say, okay, I have these intentions and I'm assessing now all of these things in my life. Or I could say, if I do want to travel, maybe I save up for a year and then spend 6 months out of the year traveling. But I have to produce that in my velocity of work. And maybe that some people do want to trade off that time. Maybe they want to trade off time and maybe they are accumulating knowledge. I don't know. But there's many ways to do that. And I think that building a foundation of knowledge first, can help bring forth knowledge like, what do I want in my life? What does a good life look like to me? How much money does that cost? Right? What is my current capability? Right? Like, it wouldn't be like, hey, we're going to go into the liquor business. We're real estate guys. I mean, we could go into the liquor business, sure, but we don't have the liquor expertise. We have the real estate expertise. And so it's like, if we make an assessment, we see, okay, we're really good here, we hold this capability, then maybe it'd be like, how do I accumulate more knowledge here to then make an offer to my employer to increase my salary, or maybe even apply for a different job or something. Yeah, that's something that just came up for me.
Well, and coming to a summation of just where we are overall, we started this podcast. This is episode 1.
Yeah.
The intention here is really just to talk, practice, think, because at the end of the day, when we reciprocate back and forth with one another, that's where we're able to bring forth new distinctions. And with that, we can apply to different situations. And so our intent here is just to speak and talk and share with others. I feel like that there's a lot of good things to say and share that may benefit other people or attract, because at the end of the day, we're talking anyways, might as well record it.
Right.
And so,
yeah, I like it. I think it's good. And the last thing I was saying about like the trade-off with employees and stuff, time.
Yeah.
It was geared towards employees, I guess, is what I'm going with that. So like, if you are an employee, and this is from me to my people, is like, where can you increase value for your employer? And then when you do that, ask for more money. But make sure that value is there, and there's an assessment, right? It's like, it's on us to bring forth these distinctions of like, oh, I am being more valuable here, and here's the accomplishment to show that.
You're telling me just because you work there for 20 years, you
doesn't mean you're eligible for more money.
So that means what is the value that you have to provide,
Yep.
and the outcomes produced by your value.
Exactly.
That's Kris. I'm Cody.
Peace.
Kris and Cody Show.